Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ba'd. Where are we? Oh, no. The Prophet ﷺ said, لو أن ابن آدم أعطي واديا ملأ من ذهب أحب إليه ثانية ولو أعطي ثانية أحب إليه ثالثة ولا يسد جوف ابن آدم إلا التراب. So the Prophet ﷺ said, if the son of Adam, meaning a human being, were given a valley full of gold, he would want another one. And if he were given a second valley of gold, he would want a third. Nothing will fill the son of Adam except the dirt of the grave. This is in Bukhari. So, son of Adam. Okay, the son of Adam is a term that the Prophet uses for a human being, a person, any person. Why? Because Adam's the first human being, the first prophet, and everyone is a descendant of his. So another way of referring to a person is by saying Ibn Adam, the son of Adam. Okay, so this is a terminology that the Prophet uses. Then he said, why is he using this term? Why is he using the term for people? He's saying because it means that most people will fall into this category. The vast majority of people will fall into this category because of the desires that they have. They would want it for the most part, right? So, a valley of gold, right? So if the son of Adam were given a valley full of gold, he would want another one. Now, why gold? Right? Why do people crave gold, and what's so special about gold? Why are people always, throughout history, have been crazy about money and about wealth and everything? Well, what does gold do for you, right? Gold can give you some kind of benefit by either the things you can buy, or the people you can buy, or the power that you will have through that wealth and through that money and all of these things. So everything that the Prophet ﷺ is mentioning, he's mentioning the strongest one out of all of them. Gold is something that people have always chased money and power and all of that, but money is one of the big things because people get benefit from it. And something that most people desire. Most people crave and they enjoy and they run after wealth and they run after gold. So the Prophet is mentioning this, and he says if they had one, he would want another one. Right? If he had one entire valley, can you imagine how big a valley is? I mean, a valley is huge. Two mountains and in between is a valley. Or two hills and there's a valley inside. An entire valley, it's all gold. Imagine just gold bricks. Right? This giant brick, it's all yours, you possess all of that. And then you're thinking and you say, it would be nice to have a second one though, Why not two? Allah gave me one, why not a second one? When am I going to get the next one though? This is nice, but when am I going to get the next one? Most people will want a second one. Not immediately, and you say, well, no, I would be happy. I would be really happy. How many people are happy with what they have? How many people who have a lot of wealth? In fact, it's interesting because sometimes the more wealth you get, the more and more you crave even more. People who are kind of at a lower level have less craving, and then they get a taste of it and they want even more and more and more than they wanted even before. That's why people who have really a lot, like millions for example, they want a higher return on their investment than the person who had a lower amount of income, or amount of money, or amount of wealth. That's the way it is. They're not happy with having something lower or getting less gains. This is just the way that most people are, and the most it works because of their desires. That's their desire and leads them to do that. So they would want one because they're not fulfilled. They would not be fulfilled. And if they got a second one, then they would want a third one, and so on and so on. They'd still want something more and more and more. And then he says, nothing will fill the son of Adam except the dirt of the grave. Nothing will fill him. Right? Fill him meaning, this is again like a metaphor. And nothing's gonna, when you're hungry, you want your stomach to get full, then you're happy. Right? But nothing's gonna fill him, meaning fill his desire, right? For craving all of these things, except the dirt of the grave. Meaning until he dies, it's not gonna go away. It's gonna be at that level, meaning this is gonna be a continuous chain, and he's not gonna be satisfied until he's dead. Because then there's no craving anymore. Your life is over. There's nothing left. This is what the Prophet ﷺ is trying to say, and he's trying to convey this message. Inshallah. Any question? Yes. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma mala'a adamiyun wi'a'an sharran min batn bihasbi ibn Adam ukulatun yuqimna sulba fa in kana la mahalata فَثُلُثٌ لِطَعَامِهِ وَثُلُثٌ لِشَرَابِهِ وَثُلُثٌ لِنَفَسِهِ. A man cannot fill any vessel worse than his own stomach. It's sufficient for a man to eat small meals that keep the back straight. If this isn't possible, then a third with food, a third with drink, and leave a third for space to breathe. In Tirmidhi. So we covered this last week a little bit, right? So what are we saying? That the Prophet is saying, مَا مَلَا آدَمِيٌّ. Another term for the son of Adam is Adami. Adami means a person, human being. Right? Coming from the word Adam, a person of Adam. Right? Adami. Right? So the average person. We're talking about the average person, meaning this applies to most people. Okay? They cannot fill any vessel worse than their own stomach. So worse meaning, he's trying to emphasize that one of the worst things you can possibly fill in any type of vessel. Like what kind of vessels could you fill, right? Like imagine someone says, well, I have those like cartoon-like, those money bags. And you go and you rob a bank and you fill it with gold. Okay, that's one vessel that you could fill. You're filling it with something which is prohibited, you stole it, right? You can take a backpack and you can fill it with something that, it shouldn't be filled with. And you can fill your car with, stolen goods, stereos, or I don't know, whatever, right? Anything you can fill. The Prophet is saying the worst thing you could possibly fill is, a vessel you could fill is your own stomach. Is your own stomach, right? So he's just giving an example so that it's clear. Now this is another technique of education. Is that he's giving you an example, he's making your stomach like a vessel, right? So you can picture it kind of, like what are the things that could be filled? Especially in a primitive society, Arabian society, they used to fill pots with a lot of things. Some bad things would be filling those things. So the worst thing you could possibly fill, and you're thinking about pots and you're thinking about things, it's your own stomach. So it kind of changes your mind from here and you go, oh, look, it's you. It's coming back to you. It's me. So your worst thing you can fill is your own stomach. It's sufficient for a man or a person to eat small meals that keep the back straight. What does keeping your back straight mean? Is it literally like, if you have a crooked back or your back is up, or what does this mean? Your back straight means you can stand up straight because you're healthy. If you're not healthy and you're not eating enough food, what ends up happening? You have hunger and you kind of walk around like this because you're hungry and you're starving. So it means that you keep your back up straight, you have enough good health. So so far the hadith means what? It's enough for you to eat meals which will keep your back straight, keep you healthy. That's what the average person needs to survive. That's what you should be eating in the first place. But the reality of our situation is what? We don't eat to live, we live to eat. All right? Especially in these parts of the world. We live to eat, we don't eat to live anymore. Things have changed. So, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that if this is not possible, where is it? Meaning if you lack the self-control, right, to maintain yourself and you're not able to keep this level that you actually need, then what's the solution? Then you do a third for food. A third of your stomach will be food. A third of it will be drink, and a third of it you leave some space to breathe. Now what does it mean, space to breathe? Right? Space to breathe meaning you leave 1/3 of your stomach empty. So what is your capacity? And people always ask, how do you determine your capacity? First of all, 1/3 doesn't mean exactly on the dot. You have to measure it somehow 1/3. But you know what 1/3 means, right? So for example, let's say a medium pizza has 9 slices. Okay? And you're really, really hungry one day. You're so hungry you did not eat lunch and you've been running a marathon and everything. There's quite a few people in this room who could take out that medium pizza. Who could really take out a medium pizza? Okay? I've done a thin crust, I could do. Okay? I've done a thin crust medium pizza. Not a thick crust, it's a little bit difficult for me. Quite a few people can handle that medium. Let's say, for the sake of math, I'm saying 9 slices. General has 8 slices, right? Let's say you put it into 9 slices. You could take out a medium pizza. Okay? Divide by, but after that, if you drank even like a cup, you're like done. Right? You can't even drink anything left. There's nothing left. You're going to throw up if you drink something. So the space for food that you have is 3 of those slices. 1/3. That's your capacity of your stomach. Right? And then you kind of measure how much you could have drank had you been completely empty, you didn't eat anything, and you figure out what that capacity is, and then you leave 1/3 for space. Right? To breathe. Because some people eat so much, they just got indigestion, especially after, social gatherings. It's a big problem. Eat so much, can't even breathe. Sometimes they get in the car and they're driving. It's probably better if they walk home so they can digest the food. This becomes a problem, right? So we need to be very careful about this formula, or this is like the kind of the maximum formula. Is there some times where if you're being forced to eat, you could eat a little bit more than this? Is it 100% haram necessarily? Not necessarily, but this is a formula which you should be following and is highly, highly recommended, if not a necessity. Okay, for the most part, you should be following it. The Prophet ﷺ said, فَإِذَا رَأَى أَحَدُكُمْ إِمْرَأَةً فَأَعْجَبَتْهُ فَلْيَأْتِ أَهْلَهُ فَإِنَّ مَعَهَا مِثْلَ الَّذِي مَعَهَا. Okay. So the Prophet ﷺ said, when one of you sees a woman he's attracted to, he should go to his wife or spouse. She has the like of what the other one has. Rawah Tirmidhi, Imam Tirmidhi said. So this is about self-control. This hadith is really talking about self-control, and it's a major, major problem today. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying, if one of you sees a woman, or you can flip it around and say if a woman sees a man, for example, and not just sees, but like فَأَعْجَبَتْهُ, meaning that they're attracted to that person. She's really, exciting or interesting or attractive or whatever it may be. And then you say, well, you start thinking, I wish I had this person. All these thoughts are going to start going through your head, right? So you've seen that person. Now, let's talk a little bit about seeing. There's something about averting the gaze. So if you see someone that you actually like, or someone that you're desiring, or whatever it may be, your responsibility is to avert your gaze away in the first place, right? Had you averted your gaze away, and you did what you're supposed to do, but at the same time, the image is kind of sitting in your head and you're still thinking about it, or you continue to glance at the person and say, oh, she's very pretty, or, he's a really handsome brother, I really, like this shirt about him, or whatever it is, these kind of things, then you're going to have a problem, because the mental image is going to stay with you, and it's going to start messing up your own relationship at home. It's going to mess up your relationship with your spouse, with your husband, or with your wife. So that's the definition of seeing. If one of you sees, so first of all, that should give you an understanding about the wisdom of why we have dress codes in Islam. And the wisdom about the way in which we dress is not provocative. It's not trying to be out there so that people can, get you attracted and all of these things. Now, if someone is attracted when they see the person, right? Attraction is natural. Attraction is natural. It's something that you're not going to be able to control. That's why you have to control your gaze in the first place. But if you're attracted, you're supposed to maintain control. Now, it's a very, very difficult thing to do, but how do you maintain control of yourself? The Prophet ﷺ said he should go to his wife if he's married, or if she's married, go to her husband. Why go to your husband? Because that person has the same thing, or at least something similar to what the other person has. What does the other person have? The other person has beauty, and you're getting attracted by the beauty that the person has. It doesn't mean that your spouse doesn't have the same beauty. You married that person for a reason. It's not like you were forced, Unless you were, then it's another incident. But still, that person has a level of beauty, right? And the level of beauty that you have, that you absolutely need, it's like, for example, if you can't eat that, $50 caviar or something like that, and it's so tasty. Okay, well, you can buy, a chocolate cake or something like that. It's also tasty. Maybe it's not at the same level as the thing that you're not able to afford or you're not supposed to have because you don't own it. But you could get some level of enjoyment or taste with the other person. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying that this person has the same kind of thing that the other person has. Maybe it's not to the same level, maybe it is to the same level, but you just got bored with it and you want something new, and you want to try and experiment with something different. This is also a really big cause of problems in today's society. So the thing is, the Prophet is saying you have to realize that, the other person has something too. And if you try to focus on that, and you try and focus on what the other person has, and all the other good characters and qualities the other person has, you'll kind of phase this out and this will go away. And you won't be craving it, you won't be thinking about it, you won't be desiring it. And what if you're not married, right? What if you're not married? What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to fast, all right? You fast and what do you get by fasting? You control your desires. You control, your cravings. You kind of let the desires go down and everything. So you're going to be in more control of your life. Because if you can give up water, right, you can generally give up a lot of things if you put your mind to it. Okay, so this is a hadith about self-control. And after this, we'll take a break, inshallah. Any questions on this hadith in particular? The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-kayyisu man dana nafsah wa amila lima ba'd al-maut wal-ajizu man atba'a nafsahu hawaha wa tamanna ala Allah. So a wise man is he who controls his desires and strives for the next life, while the fool is led by his vain desires and then hopes Allah will forgive him. This is in Tirmidhi. So, what is the Prophet trying to say? First of all, he's saying that the wise person, al-kayyis, meaning the very intelligent person, right? So the Prophet again he's redefining what it means to be wise. Right? The definition of wisdom in this life is someone who can solve, who has very good critical thinking ability. Someone who can figure out a lot of puzzles. Like when you're someone who is like really has a very high IQ and they're very observant at details, they're considered to be wise. But the Prophet ﷺ is redefining what wisdom means, not from a worldly perspective, but from a higher perspective than that. And he says the definition of wisdom is someone who can control their desires. Right? Mandana nafsahu actually means like to push down to suppress their desires, so that they're not overcome by their desires. They're in control of their desires. So their desires are down and they're in control. So what are desires? Desires are basically unbalanced cravings, meaning something that you want, but it's not in proper balance, right? Why do we have cravings? Imam Ghazali explains this. We have cravings because we're designed that way. So for example, food, right? The desire to eat is something that's there for a reason. If you had no desire to eat, then you just forget to eat sometimes, and you might get really sick, you might die. You say, I've never been hungry for a very long time. You have to remind yourself, if your alarm didn't go off, you just die because you didn't eat enough. But we have this craving, we have this sensation, we need to eat. That's balance. But when it's out of balance and you have the craving to eat, but then you can't stop yourself and you just keep eating and eating and eating, becomes a problem. Right? So the correct balance is to eat what you actually need to do. That desire of wanting to eat is something natural that Allah put in you. The same thing, the desire, attraction to the opposite gender is something which is balanced. It's something which is there. The desire to procreate is something that's there, it's balanced because it continues life and people get married and they have a family and they have kids and all of these things. But if it's not in proper proportion, either you'll never get married because you don't want to get married at all and you have no cravings or whatever, or it'll go out of balance and you start craving the wrong person, right? And you'll crave the person from the same gender perhaps, or you'll crave, instead of a human being, you might crave an animal, or you crave whatever it is, some kind of, virtual reality, simulation or something like that. Or it'll go on the opposite side where you start cheating on the people who you're already, engaged to, or you're already married to, or something like that, and you just want to have more and more and more. This is a desire that's not balanced. But desire is there for a very good reason, but it has to be in balance. So the Prophet ﷺ is talking about the desires when they're unchecked, when they're not in their proper balance. So a wise person is one who can keep those cravings at the right level, and the person who strives for the next life. So these things are put together, okay, with the wow, right, with the word end. It's a conjunction, which means they're together. So if you control your desires and you strive for the next life, meaning these two are related. Part of striving for the next life is to keep your desires in check, because Allah is going to reward you for the things that you do, right? And He's going to, hold you accountable for the bad things that you do. The bad things are defined usually as the things which your desires, which are not balanced, end up taking you away, taking you out of, going down the wrong path. So this is problematic. So you have to be in the right balance and strive for the next life. Now, what does he say? He says, while the fool is led by his vain desires. Okay? Meaning the fool is guided. Al-ajiz actually means the person who's incapable, person who's incompetent. Meaning in this case, like someone who's foolish. They can't really get anything done. They're guided by they're led by their vain desires. So meaning they have no control over their own body. They have no control over the things that they crave. So I'm craving, I just have to eat this type of food right now. Even though you're not allowed to have it, right? Let's say like someone has had, they have a heart problem, or someone has a sugar problem. They say, no, I'm craving the sugar, I just need to have it even though it's going to completely mess me up. They're not in control of themselves now anymore. This is very problematic, and this will lead them down the wrong path. So this is considered to be a foolish person, because they're not in control of what they actually want to do, right? Even if they're smart from the worldly perspective, even if they're really considered to be a very intelligent person, they're not in control of their own life. And he says, and they're going to be led by their vain desires, meaning they have no control over them whatsoever. And then on top of that, they hope that Allah is going to forgive them. So they've been following their desires, doing everything that they're not supposed to do. And then at the end of the day, they say, well, Allah is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Like we say, Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the name of Allah, the compassionate, the merciful. You say, well, Allah is Ar-Rahman, Allah is Ar-Rahim, Allah is merciful, so, I'm hoping that He's going to forgive me. Well, that's not the time to hope, right? The time to hope is when you do what you're supposed to do, and then you get a little bit scared and say, what if Allah doesn't accept this from me? And this thing in the back of your mind says, what if Allah doesn't accept this? That's when you hope. Because you did what you were supposed to do, then you hope, you say, no, remember, Allah is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Not if you do the wrong things, right? And then you go and before you even did the thing sometimes. So, are you gonna go out with that girl? You say, well, I was thinking about it, I know I'm not supposed to, I know it's against Islam. But Allah is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, He is forgiving and merciful. So maybe I'll just go ahead and do it anyways. I'll go ahead and drink that thing I wasn't supposed to drink anyways. That's not the time. So that's the time to remember that Allah is, Shadidul Iqab. Allah is severe in punishment. To get yourself away from doing that. So there's a certain time when you remember certain attributes of Allah. You remember the justice and the punishment of Allah when you're thinking about doing something bad. And when you did something good, but you're not sure if you're going to be rewarded for that, that's when you remind yourself about the mercy and the justice of Allah. When you're asking Allah for forgiveness, that's when you start reminding yourself of the mercy of Allah. Because Allah has all of these characteristics. But for your own benefit, you try to focus on things that are going to make you a better Muslim and make you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any questions on this? Yes, absolutely. So if you did something wrong and you were, you repented for it and you ask Allah for forgiveness, yes, He will forgive you for that. And that's when you remind yourself that, ask Allah for forgiveness because He will forgive you. But before you did the bad thing and you're thinking about it, that's not the time to remind yourself that, after I do it, I'll just go ahead and ask for forgiveness. Because then you're not sincere in what you're doing. How do you know you're sincerely asking for forgiveness? Right? Then you're just playing around with Allah. So there's a difference between the two. How do you gain and control, improve control over your desires? It's a process. It's through prayer, it's through fasting, it's through becoming more conscious of Allah, it's through reading the Quran, all of these things. So there's many, many ways, which we're going to talk about more in detail in the purification of the heart class. But all of these things we're talking about kind of get you to that level as well. So all of the things we're learning in Islam, they all help you with that. Inshallah. Okay. Next hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, وَإِرْشَادُكَ الرَّجُلَ فِي أَرْضِ الضَّلَالِ لك صدقة وبصرك للرجل الرديء البصر لك صدقة وإماتتك الحجر والشوكة والعظم عن الطريق لك صدقة. Okay, so this means that the Prophet ﷺ said, guiding a person who doesn't know the area, leading the way for a man with bad eyesight, or removing a stone, a thorn, or a bone from the road will count as a charity for you. So these are all acts of charity. So what is the Prophet saying? First of all, guiding a person. All right, guiding a person who doesn't know the way. What does guiding mean? Guiding is like teaching somebody else something. So guiding a person in any way, shape, or form. It's not only guiding a person who doesn't know, but you're instructing them and you're telling them this is where you go, this is where you go. Knowledge can also apply to the same thing when you're teaching somebody else. But here, if there's a blind person and someone needs to, get to where they're going and they don't have anyone to help them, it's going to be a form of charity for you if you help that person. And there are many people today, they're in a wheelchair, or you see somebody trying to, get through a door. What is your responsibility as a Muslim? Open the door for them. Go and help them. See if you can do something for them, because Allah gave you that blessing that He's not given them. And He's testing that, He's testing you with the blessing and He's testing them with the lack of the blessing. Your test is to help to other people who don't have it. And their test is to deal with it in life and to be thankful for what they have and to be patient over it. And then he says, and leading this person. So what are you doing? You're appreciating the eyes that Allah has given you. The person doesn't have good vision, or the person is blind perhaps. You helping them is a way of appreciating that Allah has given you eyes, that Allah has given you vision, something that many people take for granted. And then he said, and removing. So what are you removing? Removing a stone or a thorn or a bone or anything, a piece of trash on the floor, or some banana peel someone may slip on. I don't know if that really happens in real life or not, but I mean something, you get the point, right? Something that's going to hurt somebody else, you removing that so that they're not going to be hurt, they're not going to be disturbed by that. It's going to count as a charity for you. It will count as a charity. Now what is a charity? Charity, usually we say, well, you're giving charity, you're giving money to somebody else. In this sense, this is a charity because you're helping another person with the intention of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not just helping them for the sake of helping them. You're helping them as a Muslim because you're doing it for the sake of Allah, because of all the other things that Allah has given you, because Allah told you to do it, because it's in your nature, in your real nature that Allah created you with, all of these different reasons. So these are things that we need to do and we need to focus on so that we can actually get more reward and fulfill the rights that these people have. These are their rights. And we have to understand that they're the rights. So this selfish individualism that we know is manifested throughout our society needs to be limited and needs to be put in check. Any questions on this? Okay, next hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Kullu sulama alayhi sadaqa. Kulla yawm. Yu'inu rajula fi dabbatihi. Yuhamiluhu alayha. أو يرفع عليها متاعا صدقة والكلمة الطيبة وكل خطوة يمشيها إلى الصلاة صدقة ودل الطريق صدقة." Okay, the Prophet ﷺ said, there is a charity owed by every joint of the body, meaning every part of the body, each and every single day, showing us our responsibility. Putting things right between two people is a charity, meaning if they're fighting or something. Helping a man to prepare his vehicle, aiding him to get seated into it or on it, or loading his baggage onto it is a charity. A kind word is a charity. Every step you take to the prayer is charity. Removing an obstruction from the road is charity. This is in Bukhari. So we've seen already the removing the obstruction from the road is a form of charity. We've seen that. Now the Prophet is explaining other types of charity. First he's saying every single major part of the body owes a certain charity every single day. So charity is not something where we just say, once in a while we'll go ahead and do something for the sake of Allah. It's something that should be done on a consistent basis. The Prophet is trying to explain to us what our responsibility is. Every day on a regular basis we should be doing that. And every part of the body, meaning whatever you can do, right? You don't need to focus on one organ and say, how can I do charity here? But it's a way of emphasizing how important charity is and how you should do so many different kinds of charity. Don't just limit yourself to one act of charity. It should be diverse. And what are you doing when you're giving charity? You're appreciating the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you to other people who've not been given the same kind of blessing. Every single day, the parts that you use every single day, try to find some way, if you can, kind of come up with something to kind of help other people. Use every part of your body for the sake of Allah by doing something good, right? Putting things right between two people. What does that mean? That means resolving a dispute, right? When two people are fighting, right, what do a lot of people do? They go and they put some more fuel, I remember, man, he was talking about you last week. And you get the fight going. You find in high school, people, when there's a fight going on in high school or something like that, what do people do? They gather around, and it's like a crowd, and it's like, yeah, man, get him, man, get him a left hook, here and there. That's not the way of a Muslim. The way of a Muslim is your job is to try and stop the fight. Your job is to say, you know what, no, he didn't really mean that, it's going to be okay. Even if the person meant it, just try and calm them down a little bit. Tell the other person, why don't you just sit down? And you can fight while you're sitting or something like that. And he's gonna, the anger will dissipate when he sits down a little bit, or something like that. So our job is to put things right between two people, and that's gonna be considered an act of charity. You didn't even give them any money, but you helped them stop a dispute, or if somebody ripped the other person off, you intervene, Try and find out what happened, talk to the guy, come on, give him his money back. This is a charity, and we should see it as a charity. Helping a person onto their vehicle, or putting their things in their vehicle. Right? When is the last time, and I'm not going to ask you for hands, when is the last time you helped your neighbor, you saw your neighbor, and they're putting, some groceries, taking it out of the car or something like that, you offered to help? Right? Many people, today people don't care. It used to be something which was common in some cultures in the past. It's even gone. For us, this is an act of worship. This is a part of Islam. It's not just a nice thing to do. And you don't just do it, I want to show that I'm Muslim, so I'm showing that I'm good. That's a side effect, that's nice. People will realize and stop maybe, stereotyping Muslims as well. But you do it for the sake of Allah. And you would appreciate if somebody helped you, right? Help them from the grocery cart into their car or something like that. This hadith is more about an animal, helping the person on their animal. Same thing, helping them into a car. It's the same thing applies, right? Nothing is changed. Nothing is really that different. Speaking a kind word, even a kind word, a nice word. We're going to see how smile is charity as well. But saying something nice, right? If you go, like for example, I use this example a lot, In-N-Out Burger, right? You go to any other fast food chain and then you go to In-N-Out Burger and you see the difference in service. They have to ask you, every In-N-Out you go into, they ask you, how are you doing today? They have to, and it's with a smile. And then they have to ask you, so what can I get for you? The nicest, polite talk. And then you may go to like some other place, some other place or whatever it is, and they're like, yeah, okay, what do you want? Would you like, do you want fries with that? Are you sure? No? Okay, fine. It's fine. There's a big difference between a kind word and between another word. But the difference is, the people who are there in the burger place, they're trained and they're taught they have to do it for the sake of business. Muslims are doing it with the real intention, because we want to be nice to the people, and we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves this kind of character. So we're doing it we're not trying to sell them anything. So a kind word is better, is nicer than a bad word, a mean word. And it's even better than silence. And this is a very important point, because sometimes people, they think, the less I talk, the better I'm going to be off. That's true generally. The less you talk, the better you will be off. But if you could substitute some silence with some nice words, the nice word is better than silence. It's actually better than silence. You could sit there and you could do nothing. You say, well, look, I didn't say anything bad. All these people are saying bad things and people do so many things. I just sit quiet all the time. That's true. At least you avoided that bad thing that people are saying. But if you spoke a nice word, every word you say, you have an opportunity to get reward for it as a charity. This is a perfect opportunity. How much effort does it take? Nothing. Just say, how are you doing? Or say something nice to somebody. They'll get happy, and that's an act of charity. Every step that you take to the masjid is an act of charity. Right? That's figurative, by the way. It's not physical. So some people go, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to park in Stater Brothers parking lot every day when I come, and I'm going to make sure that I walk. So I get more steps. So no, that's not the point. The point is, if you have to travel for a period of time to get to the masjid, even if you're driving, it's a charity for you, because you're coming to a great place. You're coming to the masjid, you're coming to worship Allah. So the effort is going to be worth coming, and you're going to be getting that extra reward. You're rewarded as if you're getting an act of charity for the effort that you put in. And an obstruction is helping others, obviously. Removing an obstruction from the road, whatever it is helping other people, inshallah. Okay, any questions on this? Yeah, 3 minutes, okay. So let's continue. The Prophet ﷺ said, Man la yashkuru nasa, la yashkuru Allah. So he said, anyone who does not thank people does not thank Allah. Very simple. Anyone who does not thank people does not thank Allah. So what does thank mean? It means you can either thank them with your heart or you can thank them verbally. The best thing is obviously verbally, right? To thank the person for something that they've done to you, thank them verbally. If you don't have the opportunity, then you at least thankful in your heart. And that's something that people don't realize. So you find your neighbor just put a gift for you on your doorstep, and you take it. And then you open it up and you look at it and say, man, a little piece of chocolate? You couldn't do better than that? I gave you a whole plate of rice last week. That's not being thankful. Actually being thankful with the heart and the tongue, both something very, very important. Okay, so you have to thank the person. And you're actually thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now how does this work? How is it that you're thanking Allah? Well, if you're being ungrateful to someone who's done something for you, right? You're being ungrateful to the cause. right? There's an apparent cause, the person who gave you the little piece of chocolate, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of, led them or inspired them in a way to help give you that thing. Just to be nice, neighbor, whatever it may be. These are people. They are the direct cause that we see, that we perceive, right? But that's gonna, if you are ungrateful to them for what they've given you, that's gonna lead you to be ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, who is the indirect cause, who allowed that person to give you these things. This is the way it works. And the more you become ungrateful to other people, the more you're gonna be ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. And you're gonna start thinking, I do everything and I achieve everything on myself. So when you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's the means to a blessing. So thanking the means to a blessing, like the person you're thanking, is appreciating the blessing that you've been given as well. So the guy gave you a little chocolate, that's a blessing. Maybe you had nothing. And you thank them for that and you're happy about that. You're thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the fact that you have this as well. The fact that you've been given this. Because everything you're given is in the end by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So we'll take questions at the end if you have any questions. Let's finish the last two hadith. The next one, let's read very quickly. من صنع إليه معروف فقال لفاعله جزاك الله خيرا فقد أبلغ في الثناء. Okay, if anyone has something good done for him, he should say to the person who did it, may Allah repay you well. Jazakallahu khaira. And when he's done this, he has been ample in his praise. This is a good way to make praise, to something that's been good for you. So if something good, even if it's something small, has been done for you, one of the best ways to respond is by saying, Jazakallahu khaira, may Allah repay you well. May Allah reward you and compensate you well for this thing that you've done for me. And this is actually a characteristic of Islamic culture. You find people always responding and saying, Jazakallahu khaira. So you can say thank you and say, thanks a lot and all of these things. But at the same time, it's very good to say this and it's a very good habit to say that. And then it says to repay the person. So this is what you say, Jazakallahu khaira. Or if you're speaking to a female, there's a slight modification in the Arabic. You say jazaki instead of jazaka. This jazaki Allahu khaira. So the same thing. So the ka changes to a ki. That's the only difference. And you can say the plural as well, to a singular person as well. You can say jazakumullahu khaira, and it applies for masculine and feminine, if you don't want to make the adjustment. So both of this work. Like we say assalamu alaikum, it's actually plural, but it applies to masculine and feminine both. So you can say either one of these. And if you wanted to say it in English too, you still get the reward inshallah. But this is a characteristic of Islamic culture. And Allah says, you've been ample, meaning thanks is not simply sufficient. You've been sufficient when you actually make, dua, when you make a supplication for the other person. And the same thing about a non-Muslim. What do you do if a non-Muslim comes and does something good for you? What should you say? Well, what if they don't even believe in God? You're going to say, oh yeah, well, may God reward you. No, not necessarily. What do? You pray for their guidance. You pray for their guidance, and that's the way of thanking them. You pray for their guidance as well. Okay? And the last hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, As-sa'i ala al-armalati wal-miskini kal-mujahid fi sabilillah aw al-qa'im al-layla as-sa'im an-nahar. So the Prophet ﷺ said, someone who strives on behalf of widows and the poor is like someone who fights in the way of Allah, or someone who prays all night and then fasts all day. This is in Bukhari. So the Prophet ﷺ said, talking about widows and talking about the poor. Why the widows and why the poor? A widow is someone whose husband has passed away. Right? And a poor person is someone who's in a difficult situation. Both of them generally are in a very difficult situation. Either they have no means to earn money, or they're lonely, or it's a very difficult situation. It's like being an orphan or something like that. So the Prophet ﷺ is explaining the importance of helping these two types of people. Because a lot of times these people have a very difficult time getting help from other people. And it's very difficult to be independent when they're in this situation. So the Prophet said, whoever strives, meaning strives to help these people in this category, and help them by making them independent, help them by alleviating the difficulties that they're going through, they're going to be considered to be like a person who fights in the way of Allah. Think about that. A mujahid, someone who's fighting with their life, risking their life, fighting for the path of Allah or in the way of Allah. they're going to have a similar reward to that person. Because that's how amazing of an act this is, to actually help those people. Because you're striving in their path, you're going to be striving in the path of Allah. Or someone who prays all night and then fasts all day. You pray, imagine you pray all night and then you fast all day. That's how amazing these actions are. So what the Prophet actually is explaining what an amazing thing it is to fight in the way of Allah. Number two, what an amazing thing it is to pray all night. Number three, what an amazing thing it is to fast all day. And number four, what an amazing thing it is to help people who are widows and people who are poor. 4 things actually we learn. In case you didn't realize the amazingness or the greatness about the other 3 things, you learn the other 3 and you learn these other the 2 things about the widows and the poor as well. But this requires some effort, right? Why is it comparable? Because it requires effort. We're not talking about just giving them a few bucks or something like that. Helping a widow or helping a poor in this sense, meaning helping them to get on their feet, helping them above and beyond than just giving them a few bucks. We're talking about long-term help. And if you do that, it requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of time that you put in and you invest. That's why it has such an amazing reward. So it's something that we can do. And remember, when we're going through these ahadith, we don't just want to say, oh, mashallah, that's very nice. What we want to inspire you to do at CIS is come up with something, come up with a project, come up with a strategy where, oh wow, I didn't realize that it's so amazing helping the widows like that. Come up with, Muslim widow project or something like that and raise some funds and try and organize something where we can actually, do some of the things in this, in this class that we're learning in our society, or in some other society, or in some other part of the world, or whatever it is. So we want to put this knowledge into action. So perhaps we're going to come up with some kind of project or assignment or something like that, where you're going to have to come up with something in order to get this accomplished. Some people ask for extra credit homework or something like that. We may just do that in a few weeks, inshallah ta'ala. So any questions on any of the things that we've covered today so far? It's very clear. Or it's just very late. People are tired, inshallah. If you have any questions, you can email me regarding the content. And if you have any questions about the quiz or resetting the quiz or whatever, you email the TA, Abdul Sami Hoda, or you email his email address, cis.ta@iioc.com. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to put this knowledge into practice. Ameen. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum.